for a lot of guys who have had a tendency to have to disconnect from their anger, pretty much everybody does the same thing, which is they try and stuff it down somewhere in their core, and they lock it up, and they stop being able to feel it in their arms and their hands and their legs and their feet. And maybe once in a while it'll come up into their chest and into their head and sort of take over the show. And that's where the passive aggressiveness comes from, is that it sort of leaks out into our thoughts and into our consciousness. But what we need to learn is allowing it out into our body, not because we want to be violent or aggressive, but that we repair the relationship with our own energy of anger, right? With our own potency. Because in some ways, that's the repair with Dad's anger, right? His anger was not contained. It was not healthy. It was not directed in a loving and sacred way. And it was, as we've talked about, anger for a lot of men is an access point to potency, not power specifically, but to a sense of potency, that I mean something. I am meaningful, right? There's an aliveness that is on your face right now that wasn't there this morning. Can you feel that?
I can.
Yeah. So just say a little bit about what your experience was in the exercise and any questions that you have, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it felt like a channeling of what was deep inside of me, and it came to the surface, almost like I could touch my skin and feel the heat coming off of me in my upper chest and in my arms. If I were to have, I was surprised that it didn't sound like rage at all. It didn't mirror the explosiveness that I saw growing up. That was my only version of anger that I saw. So that really surprised me that it didn't take a matching of that rage or explosiveness in order to feel powerful.
That's it. So that's beautiful description and articulation of sacred anger, right? We've talked a little bit, and maybe, for the people that have listened to the show, you may have heard me talk about a sense of holy anger or sacred anger. And anger is the energy of protection, and protection isn't a bad thing. It's all about how we use it, right? You can use a hammer to build a home, or you can use a hammer to bludgeon somebody to death. It's all about how you use it. And anger is no different. Many men have simply not been taught how to have a healthy, conducive relationship to their anger. And sometimes what's interesting is that in men's work, in certain areas or circles, the notion is that in order to be in healthy relationship to your anger, you got to go yell and scream in another dude's face and really let the monster out. And that can be healthy, and I would encourage you to maybe explore that at some point. But we have to light the kindling first in order to build the fire. And your fire just got put so deep inside of you and was labeled "do not touch," toxic, toxic material, that we have to begin to just repair the relationship to the anger and to start to allow it to occupy a little bit more space. Does what I'm saying make sense?
Yeah, it does. And the question that I have about that, what is necessary of taking that kindling to a group of men that are shouting and punching pillows and things like that?
What's necessary about that action?
That experience, yeah.
That experience is an allowing of yourself to let the anger out in a way that you normally wouldn't.
I see.
Right? And that can be very healthy, can be very conducive for your anger to have a space. Because what we really want to do as men, and not a lot of people talk about this, is that most men are, right, anger is a spectrum. And it goes from the spectrum of almost nothing, like not letting ourselves feel it, stuffing it down, it coming out in passive aggressiveness, and it being this sort of feeble version of itself, which often manifests as self-attack, shame, and judgment. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the commentary that has come up within yourself, even as an example, and I'll just, again, I mean this with all respect and love, but a lot of that commentary of, oh, I should have, I regret not having done this sooner, that commentary is the energy of the anger misplaced. It's got nowhere else to go. Right? It's not being used for boundaries. It's not being used for direction or purpose or vitality or even within the realm of like sexual ravaging of your partner when there's this like beautiful excitement, consensually, obviously not in an unhealthy way. But it's not being used in any of those other places. And so it's got nowhere else to go other than self-direction. So the energy of that anger that is perceived as weak and feeble is actually potent in the sense that it's very good at attacking you. It's very good at shaming you, pointing out what you regret, holding you down, and becoming your inner critic. Does that make sense? Does that feel true?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And on the other side of the anger spectrum, right, because that's implosive anger, what we're talking about, you took the grenade, right? You threw yourself on the grenade and said, I'm not going to allow myself to really express anger outwardly. So I'm going to try and contain it inwards, which means that we jump on the grenade and then it blasts us constantly. And on the other end of the spectrum is this explosive external, right? The fire is out at other people, at the world, yelling and shouting at people in Starbucks and sort of wild and out of control. And it's the wildfire that just burns shit down, destroys relationships, right? And I've worked with men on this show that have expressed anger in that way. And so it's not about finding a balance between those two. It's actually about converting the anger into something more generative, more sacred, more holy. It's not about finding this like, oh, I got to find balance for my anger. No, it's about a direction and a repurposing or an alchemizing of that anger into something not necessarily different, but something that creates and builds and protects and honors all of those things.